Welcome back to the workshop.
Welcome back.
In this week's episode, we'll be turning this into a clutch pedal. My name is Oliver, and this is my dad, Andrew. He's a wicked engineer and my next door neighbour. We've always wanted to build a car together and make your own gear knob kit. There you go.
This might take a while.
Building a car and making memories with my dad. One of one, this is Project Mosquito. Last week, about 90% of the comments were saying happy birthday to Dad. So thank you for all those comments. They were,
Yeah, thank you.
They were muchly appreciated. You have to be really careful when you're doing stuff like this, that you don't get swarf stuck underneath your piece when you're drilling it, that your drill is bang on level, and then when you drill, you don't get a little tiny burr, and that knocks it over, because these two holes need to be absolutely perfect to each other. They, because they've got bearings going in them, otherwise what happens is we'll put in our pedal box, go to bolt it in, and all of our pedals will be at funny angles. Now, we here in the workshop have made our name on making things as light as we can make them, and if it can have a hole in it, we usually drill it. However, in last week's comments, we got hoisted by our own petard because a few people said, that's not as light as you can make it. We know. We did say it needed finishing. It was Dad's birthday. I had an ear infection. It's a whole thing. Speaking of which, yesterday I got stung on the same ear by a wasp. Like, nature is out to get specifically this ear. Anyway, right, point being, this thing still needs finishing off. Now, our brake pedal needs to be a heck of a lot stronger than your average brake pedal because it's an underfoot design, meaning it's a bit like a bell crank on pushrod suspension. So if it was like a bell crank on pushrod suspension, your pivot would be here, you'd have your push rod coming off it, and you'd have your shock absorber here. It's literally the same thing, right? So the first port of call, first thing it tries to do when you apply pressure to this is bend it. And in a lot of crash racing cars, you'll actually find a bent brake pedal where the driver has gone full on, right? This thing needs to be super strong, but not this super strong. This is just dumb. We will sort it out, we promise. Like I say, give us a minute, right? Luckily, our clutch pedal is just a clutch pedal. Our lives do not depend on it, and therefore it can be much, much, much lighter because the forces involved are not as strong. It's either off or it's on. It's a clutch pedal, right? So this thing can be one heck of a lot lighter. Now then, what diameter is this?
5/16, 8 mil. And it needs to be teeny tiny because we need to we're going to put a bearing in there, which then will rotate on our clevis pin.
Are you recording this? Right. If you ever get stung by mosquitoes and you're not really itchy or anything, hand sanitizer works, but so does rubbing alcohol. Seriously, it will stop the itch. It's like the best thing ever. There are a few things that I've learned over the years. One is that Coca-Cola solves a rough stomach. And the other one is if you've ever been mosquitoed to death, then you're probably dead. But if you haven't been mosquitoed to actual death, then you're just the itchiest person in the world. Hand sanitizer with rubbing alcohol. There you go. Shakespeare and top mosquito bite tips. Bet you didn't expect that in first 10 minutes of this episode. That's us. We like to give you more than you paid for, which is me. Well, you're watching YouTube, so you paid nothing. You get the idea. By the way, patreon.com/theoliverpickard. We didn't say it last week, but paraffin, if you're cutting aluminium, paraffin helps. So it helps with filing as well.
Well, another thing you can't use on to cut aluminium is an angle grinder. Because all that happens, it just clogs up the disc.
Well, you'll get through it eventually, won't you?
Yeah.
But it won't be pretty and it won't be neat. So, and when you've got billet aluminium that's really expensive, and you're trying to use as much of it as you can because it's so expensive and you've only got a small amount, then accuracy is key. That's it, isn't it?
Snap that off and everything.
Did you notice we had quite a few Spanish-speaking comments last week?
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Gracias para mirando nuestro canal. Lo siento si estás mirando los vídeos en inglés con subtítulos automáticos, porque yo sabe que a veces mi acento no transduce bien, no transduce para nada. Pero gracias para mirando nuestro canal. Suscribe, por favor. And a huge shout out to anybody watching these episodes in a second language. If you are not a native English speaker, thank you. Thank you for, I know, that's awesome. I do get messages from people who aren't native English speakers, but I know it's difficult, and I know the subtitles don't often make any sense. But in English, we often don't make any sense. So don't worry, you're not missing out on too much. But thank you for watching.
We'll get rid of that first. We'll chop that off.
Yeah.
You can use a back to
Yeah, because it needs clearance, yeah?
Yeah. And then we've got to, obviously got to make it 8mm.
Now, this morning I've been online and I've looked at the price of milling machines, right? And the cheapest milling machine I could buy with no ends, no tools, no parts is on the other side of the country, and it's €1,500. So if we bought that and we rented a van to go get it, we'd have to take a day off, and Dad and I would have to drive to the other side of France to get it. So by the time you get it home, you're into it about £2,000. Then we'd have to convert the motor from 3-phase to solo workshop power. So we'd have to buy a new motor. So if you bought the cheapest motor on the planet, you'd be into it about £3,000 by the time you've got it home and you've done the whole thing, right? $2.5 grand to £3,000. And we couldn't make a video of converting the motor and the milling machine because one, no one would care, which means it would damage us on YouTube, which means it would have like repercussions along the line. By the by. So far, we've made 3 parts for our car out of billet aluminium. We've made a shifter body, a lever, and a brake pedal. Now, if our milling machine costs us £3,000, right, that means that this brake pedal costs whatever the billet aluminium costs to buy, costs to go and get, plus €1,000 of milling machine, right? So does the shifter, so does the shift lever. That's a lot of money. And we aren't a very big YouTube channel, and we're not a machine shop. If we were a machine shop and we were making stuff, then you can quickly amortize the cost of buying big tools through production and through work. But because we're not making many things, then it's a huge cost to swallow. And we do buy tools, and we've bought tools we haven't even shown you yet because we've got stuff coming up, right? But the reality is that we're not making enough stuff to pay for such a big machine, but it does afford us a really cool opportunity, because what we get to do is we get to say to you, look, if you have a track car, or you have a kit car, or you have a hot rod, or you have a whatever, right, a motorcycle, or whatever you want to make a billet aluminium thing, and you have one billet aluminium thing to make, you can do a few different things. Say you want to make a paddle box. You can go to Tilton and you can give them €3,600, and I know the price of things varies around the world, so whatever it costed where you are, right? But you can either give them €3,600, or you can go and buy a milling machine for £3,000, and then buy all the cutters and all the ends that you're all gonna need, and spend the time refurbishing the thing, and then buy the billet aluminium, and then make your milling machine and then make your pedal box for £3,600. Or you can spend just over a couple of £100 and you can make one. And all it'll cost is a bit of blood, sweat and tears. Because just because you live in the middle of nowhere, or just because you live in a country that doesn't have the highest minimum wage in the world, or just because you don't want to go into vast quantities of debt in order to build your car, does not mean that you do not deserve beautiful things. It does not mean that you cannot have beautiful things, and it does not mean that you cannot outdo the big boys who are willing to go into all kinds of debt in order to build their car by raiding a catalogue, right? There are some things that are really worth buying, and quality is always worth buying, of course. But you've got to cut your cloth to the size of your pocket. And this is very much one of those cases. And we want to show people all around the world, right, that if we work together, you know, me and my dad, we are two people working together. We have our own skill sets. If we work together as communities, right, and you help your friends make stuff and they help you make stuff, then we can, you know, there are a lot of, let's be honest, there's a lot of YouTube channels on YouTube that have a massively outfitted workshop. They have water jet cutting tables, they have CNC machines, they have computer controlled lathes, they have CNC milling machines. That's awesome. But I'm a bit competitive, and so's Dad, and so I want to outdo all of them with these. Because we can. That's the point. I love a giant killer. I love an underdog. This YouTube channel is an underdog. We are a tiny channel. We didn't start making this car with a Ferrari or a Porsche or a Lotus, which we could have. I was offered an E-Type shell when we started doing this, and I chose a GTM instead. I actually know a guy who has an E-Type, not an E-Type shell, sorry, a 911 shell rotting away in his garden. And I could have gone to him and I could have gone, can I have your E-Type shell? And he probably would have given it to me. But instead, I chose a GTM. And I chose a GTM because I don't want to be Porsche guy. I don't want to be Ferrari guy. I don't want to be Lotus guy. I want to be Pickard Mosquito GTM guy. Because every single thing on this car is us, from start to finish, and it's all done with these. That's why we're not building a milling machine. Let's make a clutch pedal, shall we?
Yep, so we've chopped it, it's 10mm wide, and the clevis pin is 8mm. So now we can file it and get it perfectly square and get it bob on just the right size. Done it.
The problem with using such a big drill bit, it has a tendency to cut hexagons. So I think what we'll do, we'll drill small and then we'll drill bigger after. So drill every single hole 3 times, and then that way they don't end up staggered. The really good news is, the more holes we drill in it, the less there is to polish.
The brake pedal we made in the last episode, if I'm honest, it's a bit lardy. So what we're going to do is going to give it a diet.
How are you getting on? Oh. If we drilled the centre out all the way through,
Yeah, if we'd have gone completely through on these,
we wouldn't be able to drill it here. What we're actually going for is a bit like an I-beam, you know, like a conrod inside an engine, right? It's a similar kind of effect where you've got strength up either side and you've got a lot of strength through the middle.
yeah, basically we've left a 10mm spine all the way through. So we've gone in 10mm from this side, 10mm from that side. This is 30mm. So that leaves a 10mm spine, which is massively, massively strong. Mm-hmm. So we can now remove some of the weight from the spine.
And you've still got a ton of strength in the sides.
And it's gradually getting lighter and lighter.
So while Dad gets squared up over there, I'm going to take the brake pedal and see if I can tidy it up a bit, because last week we just ran out of time really, and so I'm going to try and see if I can clean these up a tiny bit and make them a little neater. Dad did an amazing job with those carbide tips, but they're a brutal tool. To try and be precise with them is virtually impossible. And it hardly leaves a finished thing. So if we can just sand it off in the bottom and on the sides, it'll look fantastic. Hopefully. This is not my best work, and it can be a lot better. Obviously, I've got no sandpaper, I've got no nothing, so I've done the best with what I've got to hand, which is why I haven't polished like in here, which I will eventually. But that's not bad. That I can live with that for now. There's a few scratches. Don't look too close, but it's good enough to stand on. And just think. The back of that pedal is so beautiful, and it's going to sit here at the back of a firewall and no one will ever see it. But we'll know it's there.
So our clevis pin now fits, which then attaches to the master cylinder. So now the pivot point's there. So when the clutch is pressed, it tips, pushes the cylinder in.
Well, Dad, absolutely stellar job you've done there.
It's worked out really well. The clutch pedal is massively lighter than the brake pedal, obviously. We've drilled loads more holes in it, but it's still super strong. It's more than up to the job. Yeah,
the brake pedal was loads lighter than it was.
Yeah.
It's shocking, just those little tiny holes, how much material you managed to remove, and the holes in the fronts of the pedals mimic the holes in the steering wheel, which is super cool.
And they also line up when the two pivot points are together, all the holes line up.
Which must have taken ages. But yeah, it's a lot of filing, just a lot of filing. But it just goes to show what you can achieve.
Yeah, you don't need a milling machine. You know, obviously, if you're going to make a few, you need a milling machine.
Yeah.
But just for two off,
yeah,
it proves you can do it. You can make something really aesthetically pleasing, really strong, really up to the job, and at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, if you're not making huge volumes of stuff, a lot of you have mentioned we could have used a router on like a plywood form, and that's worth mentioning because that's a really good idea, isn't it? If you were going to make multiples, like if all three pedals were identical, that'd be a really good idea because it'd take you ages to set up the first one and get it just right. But once you'd set it all up and got it just right, then the next two would take 2 seconds.
The router runs at 22,000 RPM plus.
Yeah.
But it'd be super easy just to make a mistake.
Yes.
Whereas this way is pretty foolproof.
Also, we aren't responsible for any ways in which you may maim yourself with a router. Because they're vicious, aren't they?
Yeah.
So be careful if you do that kind of thing. But yeah, it'd take ages to set up the first one, then the next two would take like 5 minutes. Whereas the way we're doing it, every single pedal's different because we like making life hard for ourselves. So, like, it would take a million years to set it up. We'd have to make a thing for each one. No, it doesn't fit with what we're doing. No. But thank you all for your recommendations. It is a genuinely helpful comment, and we really appreciate you like trying to help us and stuff. So if you've got any more advice for our throttle pedal, then please leave it down in the comment section. Really like last week's comments, by the way.
Thank you very much for all the birthday wishes.
Yeah, and people mentioning like their favourite pedal boxes. Someone mentioned Nissan Juke. Has a surprisingly good pedal box apparently. Oh, cool. At least the pedal box is better than its aesthetics. And someone mentioned a glider.
Cool.
Like an aircraft glider. which I've never been in a glider, so that's really cool. Now it makes me want to go in a glider and play with the pedals. Yeah, so thank you to your comments. We make sure we read every single one of them, so you aren't just shouting into a void, we're there too. And a huge thank you to everyone who likes, comments, subscribes and shares these videos on social media. You're magnificent. And a special thank you to all of our Patreon members who on patreon.com/theoliverpickard unlock spoilers, deleted scenes,
extra footage
and like little photos and stuff that I haven't put up on social media. They get to see all of this stuff first, so make sure you head over there and join them if you're interested. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Please be awesome to each other, and we'll see you all in the next video.
Bye bye.
It's a throttle next. Bye.